Hey guys, here is the part 3 of this video. The next step we're going to do is to create the API endpoints. API endpoints is nothing but a unique URL for each function. So we will have a URL for create a new country, a URL for read all countries, a URL for read one country, a URL for updating a country, or a URL for deleting a country. So things like that. You'll have unique URLs to carry out each function. So the next step is to create create the API endpoints. There are two options. One option is we can create all those API endpoints however your application needs in the same file, but what happens is it just bloats the file. So what I technically do is I organize a bunch of API endpoints in folders, and Node calls it routes. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to create this new folder called routes, and I'm going to create this new route. I'm going to create this new route called COVID.js, right? And what I'm going to do is I'm going to import the model here and some other parameters to take care of the API endpoints. Once this file is complete, I'm going to export this and import it in app.js file. So all the pieces that we create is connected to app.js, and when we run that file, the application comes up and the API CRUD application API endpoints are active. So in this file, what I'm going to do is I'm going to import the schema that we created in the models folder. So go to models and this file. I'm going to instantiate the router. I'm going to instantiate the express on this file, because for the API endpoints we need to create this app.get, app.post. Those are express functions, so we have to import the express again here. We have to import the router feature because we are creating the API endpoints on a different folder, and Express calls it as a router. So the first API endpoint we're going to create is to add data, right? So I'm going to create this endpoint for adding data. Okay, for the create call, I'm going to use the HTTP post, and then the endpoint will be just slash. I'm going to create this as an async function. Pass in request and response. Okay, so inside this function, when the Node app gets a post request for this base URL, what we're going to do is we're going to create this variable and then assign it with the parameters. So when we send a post call, we're going to send the information with it, the information that we want to store about each country. So we're going to send the country name, we're going to send the total number of cases, we're going to send the number of recovered cases. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a new instance of the model. So the model that we imported, we're going to create a new instance of that model. So that's new COVID, And then inside that, we're going to populate the country with the information that we received on the post call. So on the request, we're going to send 3 params. Like on the request, we're going to send 3 items, which is the country, total cases, and recovered cases. So I'm going to pass on that information from the request using this rec.body.country. I'm going to send the data and assign this data to this country object on the COVID model. Next, what I'm going to do is I'm going to map the total cases from request.body.total cases. And then lastly, I'm going to do recovered cases required request.body.recovered cases. Right? Now I have populated that. I have to use this data and update the database. This is again using Mongoose is a very simple process. What I'm going to do is now that this is an async function with a non-blocking I/O, async function needs an await call. So I'm going to do await and then COVID.save. So so this variable contains an instance of this model or the object, and then what we could do is we could use this instance and then call save function, which automatically saves this object to the database. This makes Mongoose so powerful. It's just one line of command. Once you populate the model, and then you can easily save it. So I'm going to capture this on the same variable, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to respond to the post request using the res.send, and I'm going to send this variable back. So this variable will have the confirmation of what it has created, and we could also check the database of which will contain the data that we sent. Okay, before running the application, what I'm going to do is I'm going to import this router file to the main app.js. So let me go back. So I'm going to call this as app.use. It's a middleware to pull in the. So I'm going to use app.use, which is a middleware which runs before any request call, like app.get or app.post. First, it runs the app.use, which is the middleware call. So in here, I'm going to use /COVID and then call COVID. I will have to import this. Import as const COVID equals require. I'm going to call routes. So I'm importing this file, and then I'm using this file. So let me comment this out. Middleware to import routes. So what this does is any route which starts with /COVID, the main app.js forwards that to this COVID router file. So in the routes, so if there is any API call, a post call for this base / function, even though it says / here, technically it means it's for that /COVID because we import the router as /COVID. So we imported that here. Let's run this process. Okay, and then what I'm going to do, let me just do this. Okay, and I'm getting an error message here. Get type function. I may have forgotten to export this. Let me do this module dot exports equals router and save. Okay, now it started. So to test this post call, what I'm going to do is I'm going to use something called Postman. Instead of using a full UI, let me go back to my drawing. Instead of using a full UI, what I could use is I could use something called a Postman, which will send all the necessary API calls to this backend to test the API calls. So it's a free software. You could download it from postman.com, I guess. And then let me show you how it works. So this is Postman. I'm going to create a new call. I'm going to call this as a post call, and then into HTTP. The IP address of the node server is 10.0.247, and I'm going to call this as COVID because that's the name of that router file, and on the router I just have a slash. So combining together, it's IP address of the box, and then the URL, the endpoint COVID itself. In the header, type content type application and JSON. I'm gonna go into the body and we'll do country name will be country K, total cases. Just do a sample number, and then what cover cases. Let me just do a number here. So the data which we assigned in the app.js, the data, the request.body.country, that's nothing but this. So the data we enter here reaches to the app as request.body.country, total cases, and recovered cases. So let me go back. I think I forgot to import another middleware. Let me take care of that. It's for the body parser. Let me do that middleware for body parser. We'll do app.use express.json. So this one is used to parse the request.body information that comes in and uses it for our application. Okay, let me save this. Let me go back to Postman. So let's post this. Let's see how it works. Okay, could not send request, connection refused. What I'm missing here is port 3500 because we're listening on that port. Now let me send it. Okay, send your message. Okay, looks like I'm missing a try catch here, so let me add that. So what it's technically talking about is we need to set up the error handling, because for some reason if this throws an error back, meaning the database, if we could not connect to the database, it has to throw an error back to the front end. So we have to add this try catch to handle error if any. So I'm going to use this main logic in the try block, and then if that doesn't work, then we will send a status message of 500, and let's send a message that something went wrong. Okay, and let's go back to Postman and run this again. Okay. Cannot read properly recovered cases. Let me check the model. Recovered cases, that's fine. So there's a typo here, right? So rec.body. Okay, let's try again. Okay, so this time it's successful. So we got the ID. The Mongo database automatically creates an ID, or it could be Mongoose created this ID. So enter the country A, the total cases, the recovered cases, and the time it created. So with this code, we were able to push data about the country data, and then we could save it in the database. Let's confirm if it's saved in the database by going to the database browser, and let me refresh this database and then go to the collections. Mongoose automatically creates this collection, and since we name it as COVID, it automatically renames it as plural, and it called it COVIDs, but we could statically have this as COVID, but I'm not going to worry about that. So here it's going to show all the country it's going to show the country and the details it created. Let me create another one. I'm going to call it country B, and I'm going to do a different data here. I'm going to send it back. Now if you go back here and then refresh this, okay, yeah, refresh this, and then now it has two objects, and if you look at the second object is the new country that we just created. So pretty much, so this endpoint helped us out. It's just few lines of code. What it does is it takes this post call on this URL, it takes this request response call under this async function, and then we create this object model with all the data we got it through the request, assign it to this variable, and then we use that variable using the mongoose function of save. We save it to the database, and then the return data from this call is sent back to the user as a confirmation. If there is a database issue, if the database is not connecting, or if there is a problem with the database connection or anything else, if the try block fails, the error goes to the catch block, and then you get this something went wrong message. What I could do is to simulate this, I could temporarily go and stop the MongoDB, and then let's make sure if the catch block works fine. What I could do is I could go back to my VM and stop the container for a second. Okay, so let me go back here. So I've stopped the Mongo container, so it's not connected anymore to the network. I'm going to do a refresh here in the Mongo Explorer, see if it works. Okay, so it got a socket error, so it is not, we know it's not connected. And let me go back to Postman, and here with this post call, with this new country, let me go send. So the node tries to connect to the database multiple times, and if it fails, we should receive an error message of something went wrong that we provided on the catch block. Give it a second. And here we go. We got something went wrong message. Okay guys, here's the end of part 3 of this video. See you guys on part 4.